Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 438 of the Health Detective Podcast. And we have a special guest today. I will explain why she's a special guest in just a second. A few quick announcements for you guys, though. We still do have a small handful of tickets for the HICS event. So if you don't know what HICS is, it is the best of health and business hosted by our very own Jen Maleka and Jeremy Maleka of Biocanic. And Jen Maleka is the FDN that actually got me into FDN back in the day, over 8.5 years ago now. So you can go to the QR code above to check that out. If you're listening on audio, we'll have a link for you guys. The code to get 30% off is all caps summer30. That's all caps summer30. I don't know really why they're still doing the discount. That's kind of nice of them because they are on track to sell out. This is not a gimmick. It's not a sales tactic. Just so you guys know, I actually talked to them. So I know that there is really only a small handful of tickets left. And the last thing that we want is for someone not to be able to go just because they can't get a ticket. So this is what I always say. Planes can be bought last second. Rental cars can be got last second. Trains can be got last second. Hotels and Airbnbs, you can always figure something out there, but we can't make more tickets appear that don't exist. So check out the QR code, use the code summer30 to get 30% off, and we will love to see you there. One other thing. He's a fan favorite on the Health Detective Podcast, and Nichole knows him quite well because she actually helps out with a lot of his advanced courses in terms of getting them facilitated and ready for you guys. So I'm already kind of hinting at why she's a special guest. But Brendan Vermeyer is going to be on our Health Space Unmasked event September 6th. That's Saturday, September 6th, for the first time. You can scan the QR code there. You can also go to fdntraining.com/HSU. That's fdntraining.com/HSU. We're going to be talking all about the gut-brain axis and how you can understand this in terms of neuroinflammation and kind of mastering that aspect of your health. So if you're someone that's really interested in the mental health side of things and how the gut and brain have these bidirectional relationship, you're going to want to check this out. Brendan is literally one of the best in the industry at explaining this. And the best thing about Health Space Unmasked events, they're free. We only do them about 10 times a year because we normally skip the Saturday in July and the Saturday in December. So we really only have about 10 speakers do this per year, but you get to hang out with us. It's like a mini one-session conference on a Saturday morning. So if you love nerding out with other nerds, come check us out. fdntraining.com/HSU to get registered. All right. Now for our guest today, this is someone who does a lot here at FDN. I want to read your formal bio, but Nichole, can we just talk about really quick because I don't want to misspeak, and there's probably things that all of us do that the rest of us don't know. So in terms of what you do at FDN, what happens behind the scenes for you every single day?
Yeah, well, I am formally called the Ascension Manager. So what does that mean? So once you graduate as an FDN, we have products, courses, graduate products, things for your business. And those are the products that I oversee at FDN. So this gut brain access that we're talking about with Brendan, that's going to be a course that we're going to have coming out, which is going to be a fantastic, all of our courses are fantastic. I don't know if I say they're all my favorite, but yeah, so that's what I do. I help set up the advanced courses, the lecture packages, the business courses, whatever we're working on in that area. I tend to have my hands in it a little bit.
Nice. And from like the public perspective, I think they are probably most interested in the advanced course side. So I feel like ever since you took over that area, I mean, we had a good amount of advanced courses when I first started FDN, but really only a few came out, even in the first 5 years of me graduating. And now I feel like we have a new one every quarter. Is that about the track that you're on with your team?
Yeah, we're actually, yeah, we had 5 new ones last year, and this year we're on track for closer to 1 every month. So, but we're leaving Q3 alone. We don't want to mess with Q3, right? We're just October, November, December, we're going to let it rest. But we're probably going to get maybe 7 or 8 out this year, maybe 9.
Nice.
We have a couple more coming yet.
Awesome. So let's see who she is behind well, not behind the scenes of FDN. Nichole Krueger is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and board certified holistic health practitioner who has been immersed in the world of functional health for nearly 13 years. After battling anxiety and depression for over a decade and finding little relief through conventional medicine, she finally found answers through functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle changes. Her personal healing journey became even more urgent as she navigated chronic illness in her children. And I always tell you guys, mom's on a mission, game over. They're going to figure this out, including Lyme disease and mold toxicity. That season of intense stress, multiple mold remediations, and complex symptoms gave her a firsthand understanding of what it means to be a mom trying to hold everything together while barely holding on. Excuse me. The transformation she experienced, both physically and emotionally, sparked a deep passion to help other women, especially overwhelmed moms, uncover and heal the hidden stressors contributing to their symptoms. Today, Nichole helps anxious, burned out women get to the root of their fatigue, mood swings, and hormonal chaos using lab testing, personalized protocols, and the D.R.E.S.S framework. Her mission is to help women feel calm, energized, and emotionally steady so they can show up fully for themselves and their families. So, welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're finally here. I feel like it's long overdue, and I'm excited to get to talk to you more. And what's always interesting is even when we've talked, privately on Slack or something, I've gotten to hear parts of your health story, but I do not know the full thing. So I will start with you, just like we start with every single person on the show. I'd like to know when your health symptoms specifically began and what did they look like at the time?
Yeah. So, as I think about it, as I thought about it more, there is a very specific moment in time where I remember them starting, but it really was probably even before that. Um, like panic attacks as a child that I didn't know were panic attacks, or some anxiety. I thought I was convinced I had a brain tumor when I was in college. It wasn't a brain tumor. But really the part that stands out in my mind the most, it was when my second child was about 6 months old, and life just started to feel like really dark, really overwhelming. I had this sudden need where everything had to be absolutely perfect, and nobody liked me anymore, because that's just not a great way to be, where you're like, everything has to be perfect and everything, nothing is good and nothing is okay. And it got to a point where it really impacted my life. It was really impacting my quality of life, really impacting my relationships. So I went to a counselor, and that counselor diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And it felt like, this was 23 years ago. So we hear these terms thrown around now, but 23 years ago, before the bloggers and before social media, and, we had the internet, but it was just different then. And it kind of felt like a sentence. It didn't feel, didn't give me the good feels, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think that would give anyone the good feels, to be fair. But I also know what you mean because I've shared this with you before. My own mental health journey. I mean, the amount of progress that we've made in terms of awareness just in the last 5 years, which happened, I would say, for better or for worse, with COVID. When we start going back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it was a whole different world
Yeah.
around the mental health side. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine if you get diagnosed with something like OCD, was that just some issue that you kind of thought like, oh, these people are super clean or something like that? Did you even understand what that meant, or did you already have an idea about it?
Well, I was always kind of a researcher, so I did have a bit of an idea. It was very suitable too, like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to clean the house. It fit the bill. I didn't hear of it before though, but I was able to do enough research to go like, oh yeah, I have this. This is me.
It's interesting too, because for those that are not in our space, you start to see all those together. And I think, again, for those not in our space, you see all those together and you're like, oh, okay, this is just like a mental health person. They have a lot going on there. But now, from a functional perspective, as someone, I was also diagnosed with major depressive, generalized anxiety, and not OCD, but panic disorder. When you start to see all those three things together or multiple mental health issues together from a functional perspective, I don't start to think like, oh, this is just a mental health person or something like that. I start to think, what is going on deeper that's having all these mental health issues manifest? And from what it sounds like already, it wasn't just limited to even mental health symptoms, right? Other physical symptoms did eventually start.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had all sorts of issues. Yeah, for sure. And so I had headaches. That was one of the reasons I thought I had a brain tumor when I was in college. Amazingly, though, when the MRI came back with no tumor, the headaches went away. So again, that just attests to the anxiety, right? You know what I mean? Like Yeah, those symptoms. So interestingly, well, from there, I was put on an antidepressant. That was the only thing they had to treat. They really didn't have, yeah, I was put on an antidepressant. I was actually put on 9 different antidepressants over a period of 10 years. Not at once, not at once, rotated on and off of 9 different antidepressants over 10 years because none of them really, I had a lot of side effects, or they would start to work, or they would help for a little bit, but then sometimes they would make things worse, or they would help for a little bit and then they would stop altogether. I honestly think for most of it, I was just really hopeful. So I think a lot of that was placebo effect. But that 9th antidepressant, it gave me head to toe hives, and then I had to immediately discontinue that antidepressant. So that is actually kind of what sent me down the rabbit hole of functional health.
Okay, so just to get the timeline clear, we'll go right back to that, but just to get the timeline clear from, roughly speaking, the time that the symptoms started, I don't even mean just the diagnosis, but the time that the symptoms started versus the time that you're on, like, what, the 9th or 10th antidepressant and realizing this is not working, is that 5 years, 10 years? How long actually occurred through that time period?
10 years. It was 10 years.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. So 10 years of not knowing necessarily anything about this. You, like you said, you're kind of a researcher, so you're looking into things, but did you even have any, did your paradigm allow you to think about natural health and functional medicine, or was that not even on the radar?
It wasn't even on the radar. I'd never even heard of it. So I was the person who, I just did everything. For the most part, I did everything my doctor said. I never liked medication. I never liked medication. So even when they had said, like, hey, you need an antidepressant, like, and I was like, well, can we test for that? Like, can you test? You're saying my, they just called it a chemical imbalance. My chemicals are imbalanced. Can you, like, show me that on paper? And they couldn't. But no, aside from wanting, like, show me in my body what's wrong and them not being able to do that, I didn't know anything about functional health. I'd never even heard of it. It was not on my radar.
Okay. I think it's already tough for people to shift their paradigm to be open to it. I think it is particularly hard when you're dealing with mental health issues to shift that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being biased because I have that personal experience as well, but it is so hard to wrap your head around how is something I'm putting in my mouth or how is something that I'm doing with my sleep leading to these very real symptoms that are affecting my life. So, and mentally speaking, with this, last antidepressant, then you get this hives reaction. You said that was what triggered you to kind of look more into this functional space. But also your paradigm wasn't aware of that yet. So
Right.
can you bridge that for us? How did you then get to being open-minded about the more natural side after the hive experience?
Yeah, well, the hive experience, I don't, if you've ever been on an antidepressant, or if anybody in the audience has ever been on, okay. If you've ever immediately discontinued an antidepressant for medical reasons, or like if you've traveled and forgot to take your prescription with you, it can be really ugly, right? So if you're used to being on this medication and you just cold turkey it, it's horrible. Like the symptom, I had withdrawals, it was bad. And one Sunday morning, we were dropping our son off. So I was in a really bad place. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Like I saw trailers when I would turn my head, like I had motion sickness. It was pretty bad. So one Sunday morning, we were dropping our kids off to the church nursery, and the woman that was standing in the nursery that I handed my son Gabe to, she was like, "Oh, what's going on with your arms?" I thought that was a fairly bold question for a person to ask. I'm like, I wanted to say none of your business, but I was like, "Oh, I reacted to a medication." And she's like, "Oh, have you ever seen a functional doctor?" And I was like, "I don't know what you speak of." And she went on to tell me, she's like, "Well, functional doctors aren't going to give you like a prescription to band-aid your symptoms. They're going to like do some testing and get to the root of what's going on and help you actually heal your body." And because of the fact that I had to immediately discontinue this antidepressant, I may have said antibiotic, I'm an antidepressant. And I was having those symptoms. And to make matters worse, and this may be like a vanity thing, I'm not sure, they were no longer comfortable prescribing me to that class of meds because I had such a bad reaction. So they wanted to prescribe me to off-label use of an antipsychotic. And I was like, I'm not picking that up at the pharmacy. I'm just not picking that up at the pharmacy. And I didn't want the other things that were going to happen to my body potentially, with the side effects from that. Like that was just next level for me. And I just needed to figure something out. So when she said something, functional doctor can help you get to the root of what's going on, I told my husband is the most patient, kind, loving, gentle man. He was like, sign her up. We need to do something, right? We have to figure this out. So I went home and I Googled and I looked it up and I went to see the doctor, and like the rest is history. That was in October of 2012. And here we
Wow.
are.
I actually really appreciate what you just said about the antipsychotic, not because, and I want to be very clear because I know you well enough. So let's specify this just in case someone's listening to us for the first time. You are not in any way suggesting that people should feel that way, but you're giving a human
No.
experience. I don't think you're the first person ever that has felt that way. And I doubt at all that you were the first person that has said, I'm not going to go do that. I don't want to go pick that up. Right. And maybe that wouldn't work in the same way for everyone because maybe there's certain people that really do need that at a period in their life. But I just appreciate when people are real like that and share that because we're all human. We all have things that we care about. And I think some of us are more vain than others, but I think we all have that. I think that's just part of being human. So yeah, that's not something you hear every day on the show. And someone out there is going to relate to that. They're never going to put it in the comments, right? But thank you for sharing that because that is tough. I remember even just for myself, I never took the antidepressants long term. I reacted like so quickly to like the Lexapro and stuff and Zolofts that I just got off of it immediately. But the benzodiazepines were the tough one for me, and they were tough because they worked. I would take that. I'm like, oh, I do not have anxiety anymore. This anxiety is an optional thing, and all I have to do is take this small pill. Like that was it. Now it led to a whole new slew of problems, which we'll save for a separate podcast. But it's kind of crazy when these do work. It can almost be negative in that way. But the reason I'm even mentioning it is because there is an embarrassment that I've felt as well, going and picking up those things. I've had the embarrassment of one, like, do they think something's like super wrong with me? Or two, do they think I'm a drug addict? Do they think I'm abusing these things? Because I have struggled with that, right?
Right. Well, and I should probably add this too. So my pharmacist was somebody that I graduated with. So I think that added a little bit of like, I knew my pharmacist. I like grew up with him in the pharmacy that I'm like, you know what I mean? Again, it's just the whole, there's no diss on the medication at all. I just wasn't comfortable taking Tylenol. So I definitely just wasn't excited about going into a whole new.
Have you been in that same smallish town your whole life? Okay. All right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you know pretty much everyone whenever you go to any store. Got it. Yeah, that's not fun to pick up your medication from them, that's for sure. So you have this basically a blessing, despite all the terrible stuff that's going on. You have this blessing of this person introducing you to this new concept. And I wouldn't normally take the time to derail this, but I hope this is okay because you work for FDN, so you also get this. How many FDNs do I talk to all the time? Totally, this has never been you, that I'm encouraging to go out and share their story and be more public about it, which to your credit, you've been freaking crushing that recently. And that's even why you're on the podcast, right? But you don't know when you're going to be someone's saving grace. Imagine if that person never said to you and had the boldness, like you said, hey, what the heck's going on with your arms? Right? Have you ever tried to see this type of individual? Who knows how much longer you could have suffered with this stuff? And there is a potential that maybe you didn't learn about it at all, right? Maybe you'd still be in this journey of trying to figure this out. So guys, it's not just encouraging you to go out there and share this for the sake of getting clients. That's a byproduct of your service. It's going out and sharing this stuff because people that have suffered in the way that all of us have should know firsthand how much a simple conversation can help, or how much sending them a book can help, or directing them to a certain website or a certain podcast. If it's ours, that's great. If it's someone else's, that's fine too. But to know that there's people in our lives that don't even know that these options exist, that's what pushes me through the fear. That's what pushes me through the awkwardness. I have to say something because I feel like I am not doing something ethically right if I do not tell them that there's other options out there. And I'm so glad not only that they told you that, but that you were open-minded enough. Maybe you didn't have a choice at that point. I get it. But like, you still went to the place and did it, and your husband sounds awesome. And he's like, let's get her fixed up. So when you went to this functional doctor, how is the approach different than anything that you had done before? Like, did they talk with you for an hour, hour and a half, or how did they work specifically? Because that could be different than an FDN, obviously.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, it's fairly similar to it's fairly similar to the intake I do, but I think it's similar because, that's where I come from experientially. So I went, well, first of all, it was the paperwork, right? The paperwork. And it was interesting because they asked me like, what do you remember about your birth? And when your mother was pregnant, I'm like, I had to call my mom, be like, Mom, were you a C-section baby? Were you breastfed? Were you on antibiotics as a child? Was your childhood particularly stressful? Are your parents divorced? Asked a lot of those types of questions. And I thought, again, I'm like, this is weird, but okay, like desperate, weird. And then they asked about symptoms, but not like, what symptoms are you experiencing? It was like, I felt like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions about symptoms. And what I later learned and what I now understand is they were asking based on like systems of the body. It was like symptoms related to maybe cardiovascular health, symptoms related to your immune system, symptoms related to your detoxification symptom. You know what I mean? So all of these symptoms. And then they ran the labs, a lot of the labs that we run, actually a lot of the same labs that we run. They checked my gut, and they checked my neurotransmitters, which was the one thing that I had asked the doctor, can you check my, I'm chemically imbalanced. Can you check those chemicals? Nope, we can't do that. Well, this doctor did. And there was definitely a problem. And the labs were really imbalanced too. Yeah, for sure.
I know it's been, what is that, 13 years ago, so I'm not expecting you to remember every little marker and every number that it was at, but in terms of the overall findings, and what were some of the significant ones that still stand out to you over a decade later? Like, was there something specific on the neurotransmitter panel that you're like, wow, or the gut test, whatever? I'd love to know some of the specifics, if you remember.
Yeah, I do remember. I don't remember all the details of the neurotransmitter panel, aside from my glutamate was off the charts and my GABA was non-existent. And they specifically asked me if I had seizures. And I thought, well, no, in the 100,000 questions you asked me, I would have, that likely would have come up. And they like, do you have seizures? I said, I do not have seizures. And they said, oh, we've never seen glutamate levels this high on somebody that did not have seizures. So then they continued to ask me questions about do you consume a lot of monosodium glutamate, which I did not. Aspartame. It was the aspartame. I was a Diet Coke. That was the last day I ever drank. Cold turkey Diet Coke. Cold turkey, never drank it again. So yeah, but so that was, I had very high, and my overall serotonin, dopamine were all very low. And if I'm being entirely honest, when I retest my neurotransmitters now, they tend to follow that same trend, but genetically, I have a fast COMT. So that is the tendency there, if I'm not being extra careful, that they still tend to trend that way.
Well, we don't get to talk about that a lot on the show. So let's also be, let's kind of open this for the audience a little bit. With the neurotransmitter tests, the actual ultimate one, you can see the levels pretty accurately, but you have to do like a spinal tap. So that's not practical, right? Most people don't want to have that to see their serotonin levels. It's not realistic. So these panels are useful. They're not perfect. Even the companies will tell you that they're not perfect. But guess what? When you have someone presenting with the symptomology that you had, it's worth running the test. And, let's find 100 people like Nichole and see, are there any patterns? And so they already noticed a pattern. We've never seen someone with such high glutamate levels that wasn't experiencing seizures. So that's an anecdote, but it's an interesting anecdote nonetheless. How long had you been on the Diet Coke habit before this all got tested?
Since I was 12.
Okay, very interesting. And people act like that's still not like a big deal because it doesn't have calories and stuff. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, guys.
So, and I will tell you this, I knew Diet Coke, even maybe not when I was in junior high, but I knew as an adult, I just knew, I'm like, this can't be good for me, but I really, really like it. Like, it's the worst thing I do, is how I felt. So, and where I worked for a tribe my office was in a casino, and in casinos, soda flows free, right? It's just free. So I would take one of those McDonald's 32-ounce cups, and I would refill it, and I would drink 4 of those. I had about the equivalent of a gallon of Diet Coke. I mean, I don't share that with too many people, but let's just talk about it here. So when I told them the amount of Diet Coke I was drinking, they were like, you need to stop. And I did. I have not touched aspartame, not even in a piece of gum, since that was October of 2012. That scared the heck out of me. So I never did it again.
Yes. And I hope this is clear as friends. I was just laughing out of shock because the 32 ounces, I thought that was why you were saying it was shocking. And then you're like, no, Ev, check this out. I was refilling this bad boy. I'm like, holy cow. All right. So yes, that'll do it. And it just shows how addictive these things really are, right? So that should be obvious to someone that is a problem. I'm actually more impressed that you were able to cold turkey it, but I guess once you saw the data, that was validating for you and got you moving. And so for those that don't know too, when you have those elevated glutamate levels, that can contribute to very severe anxiety in certain people. This is why even some individuals are sensitive enough that if they supplement with L-glutamine, which kind of stinks because L-glutamine is clinically backed to help tighten the if you have a leaky gut, it can help tighten it up. It's very good for that. Very good for a variety of other reasons as well. But you might find these clients are presenting with anxiety when they start to do that and they have the bone broth in the morning or whatever. First thing that I'm looking at, if someone's starting a healing protocol for the gut and all of a sudden the anxiety's through the roof, I'm like, okay, I don't even need a gene test. Probably this person might have an issue here. And we got to look at that. So I can only imagine what that that level was of diet soda was doing to you to contribute to all of this. And there's a great, I don't know if you read this book. Have you ever read the book Excitotoxins?
No.
Okay, so anyway, check that out, guys, because that kind of shows you this connection that Nichole is getting to between like aspartame and these excitotoxins and how they more or less excite the neurons to death, and then you feel it as these terrible symptoms. So I'm curious because I'm guessing that would have been the first habit change that you literally made. If you cold turkeyed it the next day, even if you changed your diet, that would still take some time. Supplements would take some time. Did you notice any positive benefits early on from just removing the multiple 32-ounce drinks or 32-ounce containers of diet soda every day?
I didn't, and I did make a lot of the changes all at once. So, and keep in mind, I was feeling really, really, really horrible from still withdrawals from that antidepressant. So it took me 3 months. It actually took me 3 months to feel better. I did not feel better for a while.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was just kind of wondering, and I would imagine that, I don't know this offhand, there probably is some type of withdrawal that comes from consuming 108 ounces of diet soda every day. I would have to imagine. So you're kind of going through this terrible period. What other changes are you making though? You cold turkey the diet soda. What else did this functional doctor tell you to do?
Well, they did gut testing too. So, right, like the neurotransmitter testing is fantastic, but it's still not kind of showing us root cause, right? So if your neurotransmitters are out of whack, why is that? Well, my gut was a disaster. So going back to a little plug for the gut-brain axis with Brendan, that's going to be on the 6th. My gut-brain axis, my gut and brain were talking, and they were not, they weren't, it wasn't a good conversation. But really interestingly, and I always try to make this point because people will say, oh no, my gut's not a problem. I've never had a digestive symptom. Never had a digestive symptom, not in any of the entire time. I did not have any digestive issues, like nothing. I did not have, that just wasn't one of my symptoms. But my gut was a wreck. I had really high zonulin, so I had leaky gut, and I had very significant candida that took a long time to get rid of. So working on that candida, well, and then we ended up having mold, but we didn't know it until years later. So that kind of explains part of even that candida piece. But yeah, so my gut was a wreck, and it was wrecking my brain, and the Diet Coke was wrecking my brain, and other things were too. So the other things that he had me do, really the only things, there was a lot of supplements, and I did take the supplements. And the two biggest things he had recommended, I had to go home, quit the Diet Coke, and then go gluten-free and dairy-free. And again, this was in 2012. Not that I didn't know, I knew what dairy was. I didn't know what gluten was. They handed me a piece of paper that had a list of all the different places you could find gluten. It was everything I ate, except for the Diet Coke, which I already couldn't have for other reasons. And I thought, what? I just remember thinking, I used to have a Raisin Bran for breakfast every day. I mean, this just shows how far I've come. But what does a person eat? I thought I was going to like starve to death. If you can't have gluten or dairy, what do you eat? Like, what do you eat? So there was a learning curve there. But the gluten and the dairy was so inflammatory to me. The gluten, to this day, if I eat gluten enough times, I can be right back where I was where I feel like I need an antidepressant again. And maybe it's just a weekend. Like I go to town, and I mean, I don't do this anymore, but if I go and I eat, we have pizza or we go somewhere, it's like I'm back huddled at the end of my bed. Making a phone call.
Can we touch on that for a second? I don't even know if you remember telling me this, but when we were at that one team meeting in Vegas, almost, I guess that's 2 years ago now, we actually both shared that. Because remember, Lindy got exposed to some gluten, and we're like trying to heal her up, and we're sending her all this stuff. And then you had shared something that I generally relate to. It seems to have gotten a little bit better, thankfully. But when you and I are intentionally or unintentionally exposed to gluten, not only does it bring on the depression side and just these very negative thoughts, but something else that I'll never forget you saying this, because I was like, oh, it was so validating to hear someone else express this. So I just wanted to share it on the podcast only because hopefully we validate some others. We could be happy for months, not even happy. We could just feel stable for months, right? There's a difference between being happy and stable and then depressed. There's a difference between all those three things. So you could just be stable enough, doing well enough in your life. But when that depression comes back on, you mentioned that you get the same thing as me, where it almost feels like that's just how you've been for a while. So you're a totally rational person. You think straight, but then all of a sudden you have this one or two set of bad days. And it's like, oh, do I always feel like this? Can we touch on that a little bit? Is that still something that could happen?
Oh my goodness, it is. And so when I first went gluten and dairy free, like I noticed right away. Well, I mean, it took a few months. Like I said, there was some trial and error there. So I did start to feel better, but I didn't understand yet that I had to stay that way. So when we would go out to dinner, we would go to dinner on a Friday night, and we would go to a place called the Stone House where I'm from. And it's like the restaurant to go to, or it was. And they would serve this bread at the table that I just chose not to avoid. And I would have a piece of the bread with butter, and then I would eat my dinner. And this would be on a Friday. And on Sunday, I would be in my bedroom feeling like just hopeless again. Like, what am I going to do? They can't prescribe me. I mean, they've come up with more medication since then, but in my little hopeless tunnel, there's not a medication for me. I feel horrible on the medications. What if something bad happens? Now I have more kids. I now had 4 children at this time. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And I would remember, I mean, it would get really bad. And some of my thoughts would get really, really dark. And I would kind of scare myself. And again, my husband, I would just eventually end up going to him just sobbing, like, I need to go back and talk to a psychiatrist. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I don't know what they're going to put me on. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he's like, what is happening? Like, you were fine 2 days ago. And I would kind of look at him and I'd be like, what? And he's like, you were fine 2 days ago. We went to dinner. Remember? Like, it was good. We were good. And I would like, it was, I would acknowledge that I was. It was such a it was so confusing though. Do you know what I mean? It was very hard to understand. And I'm telling you, to this day, I need him to tell me. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I cannot on my own go, oh, maybe there was gluten in that, or maybe somehow it takes him or one of my kids, teenagers they love to be helpful. One of my kids, Mom, did you have gluten? I'm like, I don't think so.
You grounded me. It must be the gluten.
Yeah, Mom, they can tell. And it's that glutamate-y feeling, right? Like that super spiked glutamate where, the pedal is to the floor in the car and there's no brakes, but it's your brain and it's not a car. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. We haven't gotten to talk about that directly on this podcast. And it always stuck out to me. I don't really remember much of that, like what we would have talked about on that team meeting, but I was just like that stuck with me. And, I speak to kids, so I always try to come up with these analogies. And I don't think this one's perfect, but you mentioned that this is hard to go through. Yes. And it's even harder to explain to someone else. That's why your husband, even though he sounds like this great guy, is probably so confused. Like, how is this possible? How do we go from this 48 hours ago to what we're dealing with here? And the best way I can describe depression, sometimes, this is not perfect, it's not all encompassing, it's just my weak attempt at an analogy, is like, we hear this thing all the time about glass half full, glass half empty. And of course, that's supposed to suggest a pessimist versus optimist versus a pessimist, respectively. Depression to me is almost like you're looking at a glass that's full of water, but then you're thinking in your head, water doesn't even matter. Like, I don't know how else to describe it other than that. Like, that can kind of give someone an insight, but it's also not some voices in your head, because you talk about these thoughts. So then people that don't know about depression, they, even if they're trying to be polite, can almost misword it and be like, oh, these people must be crazy. They're hearing things. It's like, no. That's different. There are real mental conditions that happens. I'm not even suggesting those people are crazy, but yes, there are mental conditions where you can literally hear voices. Depression doesn't do that either. Depression is your voice. You are the one talking. It's just the most negative viewpoint and perspective that you could possibly take on the situation. But in that moment, it makes perfect sense. And that's why the water analogy is the only one I have.
It does. And it is very negative self-talk. And I'm going to try to share this without tearing up. I would sit there 2 days after having gluten, and the thought in my head, because I would get so wound up and so irritated and agitated with my kids. And in my mind, I would think, you are not good for your family. Now, when people see, my family is everything to me. My husband and my kids, I love my family. I'm all about my family. But in this place, I would think, you are bad for your family. What is less traumatizing way for a mother to leave her family? To pack her bags and leave, because I didn't want to traumatize my kids anymore, or to just end it all. And now I would never say I was actually suicidal, but those thoughts would pop into my head where it was like, let's play a little game. How can I do the best thing for my family with the least amount of trauma. I mean, and that's so not me. So you know what I mean? When you take a person who, and to think that the food that we put in our mouth can do that to our,
Bingo.
that's powerful and terrifying. And I just think people need to know, because when I tell people, no, gluten can cause mental health issues, or no, gluten gives you diarrhea, gluten gives people gas. No, gluten causes mental health issues, and people need to know it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. That stuff's not easy to share, but again, I know that one people relate to that deal with depression. Whether or not they're going to comment it, that's a separate situation. And no one has to, but I've shared similar things enough times to know, yeah, people are feeling that way, and that's where it gets so. Oh wow. Thanks. You know, I don't know if you meant for your name to come up. I just want to be respectful to everyone. So I normally share the comments directly. I'm just going to read the comment. So someone said, "This is me today, exactly what you're describing yesterday and today." So thanks for being here with us. And I'm appreciate you putting something in the chat, because it's always tough to share these types of things. And Nichole is out here pouring her heart out. So it's not good to know that someone's relating, but it is useful to know that people are getting something from it. Let's word it that way. And that's the toughest part with the depression side specifically, because like you mentioned, that's not a voice. It's not a voice saying, and this Nichole, and this Nichole, and this Nichole. It's you just thinking that this is the logical decision. And I, especially dealing with this in my teenage years, I didn't get that. There was no separation. I fully believed that that was me and my thoughts. And thank God, when I utilized the counselors, and I was still going back and forth with this in my early 20s, I could have those experiences, but I could start to realize, wait a second. I've had this before. I know I feel this way right now. I know I'm trying to convince myself of this right now, but this is not always, Ev. You know, and I would have to, like, almost, it sounds like as your husband's coaching you through it, I'd have to kind of coach myself and be like, did I feel this way on this day when I did this activity? I'd kind of have to think about the thing. Be like, no, I didn't feel that way at all. That was just a week ago. This is not a constant for me, but it's happening right now for some reason. And then the last thing that you said, which that one makes me a little upset, because I do think about this and I actually try not to think about it. The only way that I can kind of work through it is just taking as much action as possible with things like FDN and with things like the mental health speaking. For me to know out there that I've dealt with what you're talking about, right? Not in the same family context, but in the idea of, oh, it would be a good decision for me to not be here anymore. Let's word it that way, for not getting kicked off of YouTube here. To know that there are not only people, but kids. There is a 15, 16-year-old somewhere whose life is no longer, because they were having these types of thought processes because of inflammation and other things in their body, because of food, pesticides, chemicals, things that they had no idea about. And they are no longer here because they made a decision based on those thoughts. I can't spend time with that, right? Because that's too much. I'm like, okay, just go take action and try to help the people that are still here and still present with us. But it's already hard enough to get people to believe that. And then once you're on this other side, Nichole, like we are, it's like you just want to get as many people aware as possible. So life's not going to be perfect overnight. We're not promising that, but at least we can stop losing people because they are acting on thoughts that are literally the result of a body that is screaming for help, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Oh man, heavy one today. Okay, let's talk about some positives, because you're here. It's 13 years later. You work for FDN. Everything's not perfect. We never expect a guest to have everything all together here. In fact, there's very few guests that do. But clearly things have worked out overall well. So you went to this doctor in 2012. I think you said October of 2012 is when you kicked the aspartame and the diet soda and stuff.
Yeah.
When did you become an FDN, and how did that transition happen?
Okay, so well, between me seeing this doctor, well, when I did see him, I remember thinking, I need to do this. Like, I want to help people. And we'll go back up a little bit. When I was in high school, I wanted to go to school to do something health related. I actually wanted to work for the CDC. So, back when I was in high school, I'm like, I just want to help people. I want to help people. I want to help people have better lives. And life took me on a different path. But when I saw this doctor, I'm like, he actually is really helping people, right? Like, not that other doctors don't, but he was helping people with chronic conditions, people who couldn't get help from other places. I thought, I want to do that. But I had 4 kids going back to school. It just wasn't really practical. Then over the years, we had issues with, we had mold in our house. I had multiple children with Lyme disease. And just all of the things started to stack up, and I decided I need to educate myself enough to advocate for my family better. If it's just advocating for my children with Lyme disease and mold illness, I didn't know what was going on. If it's advocating for myself, moms have my heart. I'll work with any woman, but man, moms have my heart, because being a mom is the most beautiful, heart-wrenching thing you'll ever do as a woman if you have children. And seeing my children suffer and struggle, and nobody could help us. Nobody could help us. And we eventually ended up finding people to help us, but I thought enough's enough. Like, I need to be able to do this for myself. I need to be able to, and now I still can't, I can't interpret my kids' labs. They're either great or they're terrible. And I still need help with that, but I can facilitate that a lot better now. So I became an FDN 2021. I started in July of 2021, graduated in January 2022, and started working for FDN the November of 2021. So yeah, that's how that timeline worked out.
I was supposed to say, I thought you've been in FDN even longer than that, because I feel like I've known you forever. So I guess that's still a while, but we've basically been on staff for a similar amount of time. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
And then how is that kind of just transform things for you? Like when you went through the course and you're running these labs on yourself, did you still have things to work on? Did it shift your perspective even further? I'd love to know about like the experience while you went through the course.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely still have things to work on. I still had gut health issues to work on, but again, we had been living in mold, and we were between mold remediations. So we did one in 2018, didn't get it all, did another one in 2023. So I still had some gut issues. I had, and I think again, I know everybody can have cortisol issues. I feel like it's just this day and age, right? Like we are so over bombarded. Our bodies are so overstimulated, but working on my stress response and sex hormones, like they just kind of went, they didn't get better. They kind of got worse, but that was because I wasn't doing the things. I'll never forget. So just a little side note, Jennifer Woodward, I worked with when Jennifer was on staff. I worked with her for business school, and she would kind of help me with my labs. She would look at them, because again, I look at my own labs and I'm either like perfect or terrible. And she was like, Nichole, you're not going to fix this cortisol with, my cortisol was just hugging the bottom. You're not going to fix it with diet and supplements. You actually have to slow down. You have to add margin to your day. You have to do the stress reduction stuff we were taught in the course. And I remember thinking, oh, I guess I didn't really realize I wasn't. I mean, I didn't, you think you're doing all the things till someone tells you you're not. And you're not going to out diet this and out supplement this. And I was like, but I want to. Can I not? So that's been a 3-year journey for me. Even that, like the stress reduction piece is the hardest for me, because type A, kind of have that lingering, perfectionism thing going on, part of my personality, but layering that stress reduction in. But yeah, so seeing that in the course, and then having other staff members point out to me, like, this is actually important. You can't just give it lip service. You have to actually do it.
I do think it is kind of hilarious, the people that we attract on staff here, because like not everyone, but like most of us are fairly nutty, and it makes it work. But like there is an overrepresentation of nuttiness that comes here, myself fully included, if you've listened to even 30 minutes into any podcast. And again, it makes it work. It's worth it, but that's what's tough for me. And in fact, I would say I'm still fighting that myself. I almost try to do everything else right just so that I can go all day, because that's like kind of what I enjoy. There might be a time and place that I can't do that. I sometimes think that that's coming up. I feel it sometimes, right? I'm like, I think I push this a little farther than I can, especially with the mold exposure. But then I'll think in my head, well, wait, maybe if I just get the mold out of my body, I'll be good to go. And it's like, that is not the right perspective right now. That is not what I should be focusing on. And that's okay. I always try to also have this other perspective. No one's making it out of here alive, and you got to choose your battles, and you got to choose what you want to do. All of us have stress to some degree. Humans are very resilient. That's how we got here today and dealt with the things that we have in the last thousands of years that humans have existed. So we can handle something. We can handle some things, but you got to kind of pick and choose, and you got to also decide how far am I willing to go health-wise? Because some people are willing to accept certain health issues and they're fine with that. Others do not want any at all. So you got to know where you're at and then get realistic about the plan that's going to work for what your goals are. So the thing that's really important, I think, for people to understand too, you said that you went through the course, you had these mold things going on. You still have some stuff to work on. But at that point, it's not even with all that, you're not suffering every minute of every day with anxiety and depression, right?
Right. Well, and here's the thing that I think is interesting. And sometimes I think back about this, and my husband and I will sometimes talk about it. If my life over the past probably 5, 6, 7 years, some people think we should do a reality TV show. We will not be doing that because it is almost unbelievable some of the things that have happened in our family. Bad, like negative, like health wise, just the different crazy things that have happened. And I often think if I did not figure this out, back in 2013, if that woman in the nursery did not say, Nichole, what is wrong with your arms? I cannot even, I don't even want to think about where I would be. I don't want to think about where my kids would be. I don't think I could have been able to push through and figure out with the mold. And again, I live in a small town. I live in a town with 5,000 people. My nearest big city has 100,000 people, and I have to drive 2 hours to get there. You know what I mean? I'm in a little town. We don't have great medical care here. No diss on it. It's just small. There's no, it's just a small area. I could not find people to help my kids. And if I was in a mentally terrible place, I'm not going to say I was in a great place, but if I did not have those tools that I knew how to handle, and like being gluten free and being dairy free and not getting jacked up on Diet Coke and prioritizing sleep. I mean, I wasn't prioritizing stress reduction. I don't even know what would have happened through all that time. I can't even
Well, I'm
imagine.
glad you're here. And I think it's even more of a testament to what we said earlier. It's like, guys, I'm not trying to guilt you. It's, if anything, I'm using it to motivate you. If you are scared to go share this stuff, re-listen to this as many times as you need to before you get it. Like, this person's life has been changed. You have now changed the trajectory of your family, and you've also changed the trajectory of every person that you indirectly help at FDN. I mean, one person that lives in a random town with 5,000 people can make a heck of a lot of impact. So don't underplay what you can do by just telling someone some information. And then the reality is, you're going to tell people a lot of information that they don't act on, right? But for every 10 people that say no, if there's one Nichole out of that, that's worth it for me. Really cool. So who do you focus on now? You do have your own FDN business. You're like me. It's not like we're just here only doing FDN. Most FDNs that work on staff, I always love that Reed promotes this, right? He wants us to go out and do our own thing as well. So who do you work with now, and who do you really like to help?
Again, I love to help moms. I'll work with any woman. I love women. I mean, I love everybody, but I have a tendency towards women. I love to work with moms, and I'm working with those moms they're feeling overwhelmed, they're fatigued, they're just burned out, right? They've been taking care of their families. Moms notoriously put everybody above themselves, and in some ways, it's a hard market to work with because moms aren't really there to put themselves first, But when you get to a certain point and you realize, I have to make some changes so I can be, I just remember thinking I desperately wanted to show up as the woman I wanted to be. I knew who I wanted to be, and I desperately wanted to show up that way to my family. And I didn't know how. So that's I work with women who are overwhelmed, they're burned out, they have depression, they have anxiety, they're usually carrying a little bit of extra weight because it's hard not to when you have all that going on. And I just help them to find those imbalances in their body, right? Find those imbalances, learn to give themselves grace, take imperfect action, and start to heal their bodies so they can just really show up to their families and, not feel that shame and not feel
Yeah. I
like
know that
crap.
there is a privacy side to this, so only to the degree that you're able to share. But whether it's a family member, whether it's a client, I just love to hear like some other really cool story, because it's one thing for us to do it, like we're out here making progress with our health, but people say, well, you guys are so obsessed with it. You work for the dang company. Of course you were able to do it. And it's like, no, we're able to help other people that don't do this full time, full time, full time. So is there any really cool stories of healing or progress that come to mind when I talk about your clients or family members or people that you've been able to help?
Yeah, yeah. So one of my favorite ones. So a woman that I know, her aunt had come to me, and her aunt was in her 50s. And the woman said, she's like, well, I don't know about what you do exactly, and I'm not going to change my diet. Not the aunt who came to me, but her niece. She said, if you can help my aunt is crazy. If you can help her, I'll believe in what you do. And she loves her aunt dearly, but she just like her aunt for years and years and years had just struggled with anxiety so badly. And I mean, she was just a ball of nerves when she came to me. You know how you can just kind of sense those people who they're just like, just nervous and a shaky ball of nerves. And, we did the testing, we worked on the things. She'd already been gluten-free for 20 years. So that part was done. And honestly, I was a little nervous. I'm like, ooh, that's one of my big guns. You know what I mean? But there was so much else going on in this woman's body. And this, actually just this week, it's our state fair this week. I ran into her at the state fair this week. And again, I'm going to try not to tear up. She came up to me and she gave me the biggest hug. And she said, Nichole, so her husband is having some health issues. And she said, Nichole, I just thank God for you every day, because I would never be able to do the things I'm doing. I would never be able to help my husband like this if you did not help me, if I did not see. She didn't believe she could be better either, but her husband encouraged her. And she just thought, okay, we'll try this. And for her, it was a big thing. She had to take out a loan. She had to do, to pay for the services. And she did everything. She did everything the best that she could. And this is probably a year ago at this point. We worked together for 6 months, extended it for a couple months beyond that. And just to have those people come up to you who are kind of a former version of myself, not the exact same, but kind of similar, right? Just that you feel hopeless, like I'll never be able to do this. And again, she's helping her husband go through this stressful time. And she was like, I just wouldn't be able to do it this if you wouldn't have taught me. And that, when you have someone who's just dealt with it their whole life, just to be able to show them, if that's the only person you can show, if their life is different and they no longer have to deal with that, and she's a mom and she's a grandma and she's an aunt, and life is different for her in her 50s, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's all emotional for me.
I think that's a pretty darn good story. We do have some great comments. I normally am not able to take questions this late in, but I think this is important. So Michelle, we will take yours. Also, got to shout out Deborah T, who hops on all these. We'll meet her at HIC, so I'm very much looking forward to meeting Deborah. She just said, thanks so much for sharing and doing the important work. If we could get some thank yous for Nichole, if you're resonating with this, please drop those below. Michelle asked, though, was it hard sharing your truth and being vulnerable? Because what you described is me. I'm worried it will be difficult with this niche, but it's why I joined FDN, your exact niche.
Yeah. So Michelle, it took me a very long time to repeat those words. And I didn't even know if I could do it here without getting teary, because I like to think I'm at a healed place now, but it took me, I did not share it at first. I started in this niche without sharing it. And then I don't even remember who told me. I just remember when the words first came out of my mouth, it was to my friend 15 years after the fact, like that I would share those things, or after the gluten and then going back on gluten. It took me probably 5, 6, 7 years. And I told my friend, and it was like, after a few glasses of wine, you know what I mean? And it like a little more bone, and it came out, and I instantly was like, why did you say that? Why did you? Because it feels like such a shameful, horrible thing to say as a mother. You know what I mean? But saying it and not have her go, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? It kind of gave me a little bit of freedom, Michelle. So, and as I've shared it privately with people, they've opened up and they went, oh my gosh, me too. Thank you for saying that. And that's what I think, when we know that other people are dealing with it. As soon as I knew other people dealt with it, I thought, no, I can share this, because I can't stand the thought that there's other women out there that feel like that, and they think they're the only person on the planet that feels that way.
I want to, we're going to talk about where people can find you, of course, but I wanted to just kind of wrap up on this, because I think so many of us go through this that suffer with mental health in one way or another, right? So like, there's different reasons that we're afraid to share. There's different biases for women. There's different biases for men. I was never supposed to be a guy that's dealing with all this kind of stuff and talking about these things. But when you do start sharing it, it's almost a new problem. I'm not saying this in a bad way, because it's a problem that you can actually help solve. But to your point, when you start sharing this and realizing how many people do respond in the sense that they relate, you're like, it's overwhelming. Like, it's not 1 out of 10. It's not even usually 1 out of 4. It's a lot more than that. And I think the numbers are greatly skewed. So I'm a walking self-help quote. My colleagues know this here, but I will kind of finish my part on this. I wrote a mental health book, not to sell it. I don't know if I've ever talked about that more than once on this entire podcast, like in the 400 something episodes that we've done. So shameless plug for the book, I guess. But the last quote in it, and I I never know if people get this, but you get this because you just talked about it. The last quote in the book is, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give permission for others to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence actually liberates others. And it's like, what does that, like, that sounds cute. Like, what does that mean for a mental health book? This is it, right? When you talk about the things that you're never supposed to talk about, when you're willing to kind of think about the unthinkable, because again, some of it's uncomfortable. We want to reject those thoughts. That stinks. It's not fun, but it brings you this other sense of joy in your life where you get to be this beacon of light for other people. And I will tell you this off air. I won't get into this now, but I am just so glad that you are finally doing more of this, because like, you belong doing this stuff, my friend. This is awesome. If you guys agree with me, drop one more thank you for Nichole. Where can they find you if they would like to work with you?
Yeah, well, so I'm on Instagram as just Nichole Krueger. I'm on Facebook as She Builds Health. I have a website, shebuildshealth.com. But right now, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm currently running a free educational series because so many moms will not take the time to invest in themselves or the money to invest in themselves. So I'm doing a free educational series called The Calm and Nourished Mom on Facebook. It's in a Facebook group. You have to sign up. It's in a private Facebook group. If you go to my Instagram, there's a link in the bio to sign up for the group. And what it is I take people through, it's 12 sessions every other week, and I take them through the exact diet and lifestyle things, like the basic diet and lifestyle that I do my one-on-one clients, so they can really get kind of those basics under their belt with diet, rest, exercise, and stress reduction to kind of prime their bodies and be ready and see if they really want to do more of the work like this. Because sometimes it's hard to know, like, do I want to do this? Let's see if the diet and lifestyle stuff fits. So that is what I'm doing right now. I started the beginning of January or July. It'll go through the beginning of December. Every 2 weeks, I go live in a Facebook group. The information's on the link in my profile.
Well, great name and very easy to remember. She Builds Health. I love that. Okay, signature question for you on this show, and I'd love to believe that my colleagues listen to my podcasts all the way through, but something tells me that might not always be the case. So I'll ask you it directly. This could be about anything. Doesn't have to be about mental health. Doesn't have to be for moms, but it can be about mental health, and it can be for moms. It's up to you. If we could give you a magic wand, you could wave it and you could get every single one of our viewers and listeners to do just one thing for their health. So that means you can get us to start doing one thing, so a new habit, or you can get us to stop doing one thing. What is the one thing that Nichole Krueger gets us to do?
Oh my goodness. The first part of me wants to say, just stop eating gluten. But I think if I were talking to, and again, in my mind, I'm going to moms, and as a mom, my heart is so for moms. It would be stop thinking you have to be perfect. Stop thinking that everything you do has to be done in perfection. It's okay. Give yourself grace. You have to learn to give yourself grace. You will never make progress if you're just constantly shaming yourself, and you won't give yourself the grace that you give everyone.
Thank you so much for coming on today.